In the last episode, I laid out the 3 reasons why you've tried communication tools in the past and they haven't worked. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the 5 signs that you're not communicating. I mean, learning tools is great, but if you've lost your audience, what's the point? So stay tuned. Hey there. Welcome to the podcast. Hello. I'm very excited you're back and ready to keep talking about how to have effective communication in every single relationship. I know you learned a lot in the last podcast and have been practicing it all week. But before we get into it, I want to let you know that I'm now doing a video recording also of me doing the podcast. So, yep, you can watch my face as I boss you around by going to my YouTube channel. I have a link on my website, abbymedcalf.com/podcast. It'll be there in the show notes. This is episode 152, or any of the footers along my website have all the social media and all that, and YouTube. Or you can go to YouTube, type in Abby Medcalf PhD, do a little search, and there is my YouTube channel. And you could subscribe. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe. Even if you don't want to listen to me over there or watch me. I have no idea why people want to watch, but you've asked. So I figured no skin off my nose. I'm already sitting here. Why not? So you can come hang out with me. And again, if you haven't subscribed yet to the YouTube channel, please do. To the podcast also, are you a subscriber so you don't miss an episode? Hello. All right. So I guess that's enough gabbing, right? We should just get to it. I'm been really excited. Again, I'm doing this sort of 3-episode arc, and I'm dropping them all at the same time. So you can binge watch these three or listen to these 3. You can do whatever you want with it or just chunk them up. I actually would love it if you let me know if you like it or not, like having things chunked up a little more, or if you'd rather just have long episodes, or how you'd like that to be. It'd be great. You can email me at abby@abbymedcalf.com, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment underneath. I'd love to hear how that feels for you. Okay, so let's get to it. So the 5 signs that someone isn't listening to you, because we've all been there, right? I know I've been there. I'm talking to someone and it's funny. I can realize that someone's not listening to me, but for some reason, I don't always key into it. And I just keep talking. Sometimes you talk louder or start, getting angry or frustrated instead of just stopping the conversation there. But anyway, I've done it too. So please don't think, I'm perfect at this. But I do catch most of it most of the time, thank gosh. And I sort of compare it to, if you're sitting alone in a room and talking out loud, would you define that as communicating? And I don't think so. But half the time you're practically doing just that but calling it communicating. You're speaking to you or at, you're speaking to you. Sorry, you're speaking to your partner or at your partner or something, your coworker, your kid, whoever. And they're really not listening to a word you're saying. Again, it might as well be an empty room that you might have even said, I might as well be alone speaking to an empty room for all the good it's doing me. You might have even yelled that out. Guess what? Yeah, that's the truth. And maybe you should have listened to yourself earlier. So, and I think this is, again, one of the problems. Too often we learn these great tools for communication, but we're missing the signs that the other person isn't listening. And that's really why I created this complete effective guide to effective communication, because when people just give you tips, it doesn't work if you don't have all the other pieces. There's a reason they don't work. Otherwise, you'd already be doing it and you'd be fine. So, because you are getting the signals. Trust me, you are getting signals when people aren't listening to you, that that it's not landing with them, that they're really not hearing it, but you ignore them and you move full steam ahead anyway, somehow. So, and you feel it in your gut that you're not being heard, you're not being understood, or even you're being misunderstood somehow, instead of, stopping right there and trying to figure it out. And again, if you're like me, maybe you speak louder, or you just get angry and frustrated. Maybe you walk away, you're hurt and resentful. Then later you're saying to that person, well, I told you that already, no one listens to me around here. Or is that just me? Okay. So there's 5 major signs, like I said, that communication isn't happening. And when you learn them, you can really start having this different kind of communication with people around you. You've got to keep it in mind, the kind of these 5 things in mind, because what you want to do if you see any of them is stop the conversation in its tracks. Just stop talking. Just stop talking. Uh, and you got to reset, got to re-strategize. So, and you know me, I always have my little cute acronyms for everything. And this one I call BRAID, and and I've changed it a little bit. I've called it BRAID for a while, but I've changed it a couple times. So, even if you've heard this before, keep listening. So basically it's BRAID, BRAID. That's how you remember it. If any of these things are happening, right? You're kind of screwed. And remember, it could be you doing it, not just the other person. So if you're in this frame, then you want to stop the conversation. You want to realize what you're doing and just stop. Okay, so let's get to it. So the B is for blaming. If you, again, or the other person you're talking to is acting like a victim, or if you're blaming one another or anyone else for the situation that you're talking about, communication has stopped. I don't want you to think about it. If the person you're trying to communicate with is blaming you, it means they're not taking any responsibility for whatever happened, right? Whatever went down, which means they're certainly not going to take responsibility or listen now that you're talking to them. That's not going to happen. And I say with love, the same goes for you. If you're walking into a conversation blaming the other person for your feelings, then, or whatever happened, then you haven't taken responsibility. So you're not trying to communicate effectively. You're just trying maybe to make the other person feel bad too, because you feel bad. I know. Again, I love you so much, but I got to speak honestly. I think that's what you're doing. And I've done it too. I'm not going to say I've never done that, but really the blame game is one of the worst things you can be doing. And it just takes complete, what people are doing is they're just putting it somewhere else. They're acting like a victim. If you're doing it, you're doing it. You're acting like a victim. If they're doing it, they're acting like a victim. You're just putting all the responsibility outside yourself and not taking ownership. And a lot of times I find that we blame when people trample our boundaries, because again, we think that they're responsible for holding our boundaries. You're responsible for holding your boundary. And you need to make sure that there's some sort of response or consequence or change in action when someone tramples your boundaries. If you just say, hey, don't trample my boundary, and they trample it and you don't do anything, then not much is going to happen. If I tell, my wonderful son stayed out all night, my teenager, it's going to be 18 in a couple weeks, but I got to tell you, I don't care. He lives under my roof, and he stayed out all night, and he didn't text or say anything, or I didn't know where he was. I panicked. It was a long story, but anyway, so if he did that and then there was no consequence on the other side, and I just said, hey, you're not allowed to do that. Don't do that again. Stop it. My guess is he would keep doing it, because why not? Nothing happens. What, I yell at him a little, I say something, so what? But if all his life stays the same, then that's really different. And, that really makes things stay the same. But if things change, if I do something about it, and I did, trust me, he had many consequences for that. Guess what? And I will say, he's never done it before. He's never done this in all these years. My Max, he's wonderful. Sometimes I have issues, but he doesn't quite do things like that. But even though it was only one time, it was a huge thing. It's a really big deal, right? So I made it a big deal in how we talked about it. Okay. So just saying. So you got to do the same thing. So stop blaming and start, right, putting that responsibility back on you. But if you see it, stop the conversation. You're not going to get anywhere. Okay. So braid, that's the B. R is reading minds. You can't read anyone's mind, and they can't read yours. If the conversation you're having has anything like, I know what you're thinking, I know what you're going to say, I know what your answer is going to be, so I'm not even going to ask. You should know by now what I want, or oh, I love this one. You knew what I meant and you did it anyway. Or you said it anyway, or you pretended you didn't. Then the conversation should stop right then and there. Whoever thinks they can read minds isn't looking to have a real dialogue. They're not being curious or seeking to understand. They're just trying to prove themselves right. I say with love. I really do love you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be having these conversations with you, right? This is a labor of love. I put out all this stuff because I love you. I want things to change. I really want things to change, but you got to get real. It's so funny. People love to change until you ask them to change. Then they're like, I don't think I want to change. But I know you do, because you're different, because you're listening and you're with me. So I know you're fabulous. So stop reading minds. Stop. And I know what you're doing in your head. You're thinking, well, I was right. They did say what I thought they were going to say. If you need to go back right now, stop listening and go back to the episode I just did, 151, this first part in this communication series. You got to go back. And I explain why you're wrong, why you're so wrong that you were so sure. You're tricking yourself. And I explain it all on that podcast. I'm not going to spend time here, but if you listen to it already, and if you're binge listening now and just heard it, it's fresh in your mind. Confirmation bias, RIS, it's fresh in your mind. So you know why reading minds is bullshit. Okay. So that's the B and the R. The A is arguing. So if you are arguing, and I want to really be clear about what arguing is. A lot of times people think it's just when they're kind of fighting, out loud. No, it's got a lot of pieces, lots of ways that people argue with you that are very quiet, So I want to talk about them. So obviously, once you start attacking each other in any way, the communication train has run off the tracks. But again, having a full out fight with raised voices isn't the only way arguing shows up. There are really a lot of behaviors that fall into this category that you probably don't realize are kind of hostile. Arguing is hostile. It's really any hostility. So let's talk about them. Okay. So I'd say the first one I think about right away is being passive aggressive remarks or actions. You got aggressive right there in the title, right? So anything that's passive aggressive is, forget it. Stop the conversation. You're in the arguing, you're in this realm, and communication isn't happening. Any kind of, sarcasm that's kind of biting or constant, oh, what? You can't take a joke? You take everything so seriously, that kind of crap, no. Name calling, even in a calm tone. You cannot call people out of their names. You got to stop. I don't care who you're talking to. That is just a sign that you are overwhelmed. And if you're that overwhelmed, you shouldn't be talking to anybody. If you call someone, you're being such an asshole or whatever you say to them, and I don't care how quiet or loud it is, it's not okay. It absolutely needs to stop. It is hostile. It is, it's really, I consider it abusive. So you really got to stop. It's never okay. Don't tell me you can't help it. That's a load of crap, and you got to stop. But again, if it's happening to you or if you're doing it, and this is linked to that, diagnosing. I hear people diagnosing each other all the time. You got to stop. Only I can diagnose, only a mental health professional should diagnose. I don't care what you've read or how many, YouTube videos you've watched. Saying to your partner, you're bipolar. I hear this stuff a lot. My partner's bipolar. It's like, are they really? He's a narcissist. She's a this, nope. You got to get off of that. So, because if they were diagnosed with something, it's not helpful to be yelling it in an argument or to be saying it in an argument. And it's really kind of mean. To me, it's kind of close to name calling. So, but it's like when you try to diagnose, you're so angry all the time. It's not you're diagnosing, you're deciding what they are. Just let that go. It's not part of great communication. It's not really going to help you. Discounting or minimizing. I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this. It's just not that important. They're kind of minimizing the thing that you think is so important. Any of that is hostile. It's really their way of, shutting you down or shutting you out. Obviously, any attacks on character. You've always been a drama queen. No wonder you don't have any friends. No one likes you, that kind of stuff. That's just mean. Again, it's an attack. And I want to say too, silence is really hostile often. So, a cold shoulder, withdrawal, emotional withdrawal. Yes, dear, that kind of, yeah, sure. The shoulder shrug. I hate the shoulder shrug. No, I don't know. I don't know. That shoulder shrug makes me crazy. I don't know. All of those things are someone showing you that they're resistant to what's happening, that they don't want to have this conversation, and that they are not having this conversation, that they are not communicating. So any of them let you know that the communication, again, train is like off the rails. All right. And I haven't even gotten to the, okay, that's BRA and that bra. Now we've broad. And now I'm going to get to the I and the D. So a braid. Interrupting is the I. This is really big. So if you're being interrupted, or if you start talking over the another person, again, conversation should just stop. If you're being interrupted, it means really that the other person is in sort of that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. So their amygdala, that fear part of their brain is really turned on, and they're no longer listening, if they ever were, actually. And I talk about fawn mode, the fight, flight, freeze. We added fawn. Fawn is I forget the guy. Pete Walker, I think, is the guy. I have it in another podcast where I talk about that is a a trauma response. But fawning basically means that you react to something with excessive people pleasing. And so that can happen too. You could be saying what you want to the other person, and they could be like kind of interrupting you and just like, oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, no, I'm going to do it different next time. And we don't need to talk about it. That is not, they are in their fear-based brain is turned on. You can feel their fear, right? You can feel it coming at you. Just like if they were fighting you, running away, or freezing and, submitting or yes-steering you, whatever. All of those things are signs that the person is no longer listening, which means you can't be communicating. So interrupting on any level, you interrupting, you talking over, them interrupting you. And, interrupting can also be if the person you're talking to takes a call, even looks at their phone, gets distracted by something or someone outside the conversation. Any of that's interrupting, because they're interrupting your flow, right? They're taking themselves out. It could also be seen as kind of arguing in a way, right? As the A, because they're sort of dismissing what's going on, depending on how they're doing it. And also, if you see that they're trying to talk, when you're saying something to someone and they're like, you can see they're sort of right there, you want to stop the conversation. At the very least, to just say to them, this isn't working because you're just wanting to talk over me. I know you're stopping yourself, but the fact they're not listening. If they're coming up with a response, if they have a response ready to go and they're thinking it in their moment, then they've stopped listening to the rest of what you're saying. So you really want to stop the conversation and slow it down. And then the D, last part of braid. So we had blaming, we had reading minds, we had arguing, we had interrupting, and now we have D, defensiveness. Any defensiveness at all, again, by you or the other person, is a sign that people are in, again, that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, and no communication is happening. So it's time to, really reset or come back to the conversation at another time. All this doesn't mean that you get angry or, if any of this is happening. It's not about that. And I'm going to teach that in the next, episode, where I'm going to lay out those, my 5-step process. But I just want to say that's not, I just want you to notice that these are the signs no one's listening. I haven't told you really what to do yet, when it's happening, other than stop the conversation. But when we go over in the next kind of little chapter here, what to do, you'll see how it really fits in. And again, if there needs to be that place where you're not just focused on being right, where you're not just focused on, saying the thing, but where you truly want to communicate. You truly have a desire that you're talking with someone, not at someone. And okay, so, and I'll get to all that really soon. So I want you to keep this acronym in your head, make it the wallpaper on your phone, print it out and hang it on the refrigerator, anything to ensure that you remember to watch out for these 5 signs, that, knowing that your communication is stalled, it's time to regroup, it's time to re-strategize, it's time to, see the stall for what it is and really stop it. Okay. And that's it. That's it for this episode. So if you haven't listened, like I said, to episode 151 yet, go back and check it out. Again, it's a 3-part series in this, my complete guide to effective communication in every relationship. So that's what I'm doing here. And I want to remind you to come to abbymedcalf.com/podcast and download your free toolkit that teaches you how to align your conscious and unconscious minds. And again, you'll learn more about that in that first little section I did of this podcast. But because once you get that alignment, you really start creating this really strong self-confidence and this deeper connection with the people you love, the people you work with, the people you connect to, the people that are in your world. So it's really at the heart of so much. Again, it's why I've done this little series in the order I've done it in. But having Bray just in your head all the time is going to be helpful to you, when you're interacting anywhere. And my clients always say they'll start to see it places, they'll be talking to their boss or talking to their kid or whatever, and they'll see one of the things and go, oh, I just have to stop the conversation here. Oh, and again, I'm going to give you other tools for what to do there, but that's really the point. And that's it for today. I know. So thank you. If you've listened this far, you are hanging in there and doing it. I kind of hope you're binge listening to all these. It'll be really fun to kind of get them all together. But if you're not, it's all cool. They stand alone. And I love spending our time together. As always, I really enjoy this. This is really the favorite part always of my week of just connecting in this way. I really love it. That's it. Have a wonderful day, minute, week, whatever it is, until you listen to the next. And I love you so much. I want you to have that love for yourself too. And I will talk to you real soon.